Hi, Stephanie. Hope you had a great Christmas. Decided to retitle this video Anti-Choice is Anti-Life, Pro-Choice is Pro-Life, and just to give it a more of a, I think, a clarity and a more of a more accurate title in terms of what I think, in terms of my perspective. But I think that'll become clearer as to why I would say the anti-choice position is anti-life. A little more clear once this video is over. I think it'll address that for your viewers as well. Now, I'm not going to address all the points you raised in your 40-minute video, but I'm going to do my best. First, I'm going to address the issue of religion and its influence on you from changing your view from a pro-choice to an alleged pro-life position. And I'll deal with, of course, personhood, rights, and your view, collectivist view of reason. So let's deal with the first issue, which is your theological perspective. You may be aware of the doctrine of ensoulment. Now, what the doctrine of ensoulment is the perspective that that at conception, God breathes the soul of the soul into the womb at birth. At conception. So it's sort of God's stamp of approval on that process. So now, the doctrine of ensoulment, when you think about it, would, if you were to be consistent, means that you would also oppose contraception. Now, a lot of Christians, a lot of Catholics oppose contraception for this exact reason, that it is stopping a process from occurring that is human beings playing God. So we're sort of intervening in the process of a natural occurring event, and the sperm uniting with the egg, and this is human beings playing God. So I'll let other Christians argue with you about that view, and because it is a view that's been very very pervasive within Christianity. So that's why I think your position, obviously, with regard to ensoulment and abortion, and your pro-choice position prior was in conflict. And so when you adapted the theological perspective, you're being consistent, and that means that every secular argument you make is really just irrelevant to your ultimate perspective, because it's really not addressing the core issue for you, which is theology. So in order for someone to really, I think, debate you out of this perspective, I think it would be a lot more difficult, because they'd have to use theological grounds, to me, which is irrational grounds, to get into a debate as to what your perspective is on abortion. So I just offer these arguments as an opportunity for you to at least see a perspective that is more in line with the pro-life position, which is, I think, the pro-choice position, and a benefit for your viewers who are secular minded and might be persuaded by my perspective. Now, with regard to personhood, I think personhood I didn't clearly define, because I was getting into a discussion about the potential versus actual in this idea of once the sperm and egg unite, and then you have this process that begins at conception, but once birth takes place, once the actual birth happens at the ninth month, then you're looking at a human being at that point. But when does personhood really occur? I would say we should really pinpoint it at the cutting of the umbilical cord, because a person is a separate entity. Within the womb of the mother, the fetus is living in the world of the mother. So it is when the in the third trimester, when there's any consciousness within the womb, it's the womb of the mother. It's not it's not the reality of the external world that we observe when we move our heads and everything else, and we're not attached in the world of the mother. And this a situation like this where you have you can't have a situation where rights can't be exercised. If there's a rights conflict, you have to go with the host and not with the parasite. I know that the fetus in a sense is living off the host, and I know that these are the words that have to be used, but that is essentially the situation. A fetus is in at that point in time. Okay, so that's where I would define personhood, and in the sense that it's the now of male or female. This baby has a brain that is perceiving a world. It's not living at a conceptual level, obviously, and it's sort of has to develop its brain, and the parent there is really a guardian in a sense, and is looking after that child and helping it become an adult, right? An autonomous adult. And so it has a responsibility there and gives it up for adoption if the parents cannot look after that child, then the government would intervene if that child is being, the rights aren't looked after. Now, with regard to rights, to segue into that, a woman has sole jurisdiction over her body, and so we look at entities. And when I say we, as in the Western liberal tradition, classical liberal tradition, views the idea that we are sovereign beings, that we again, I'm talking about some of a view that's pervasive or very, very strong within Western society, and we view the body as your own. Like you have sole jurisdiction over your body. It's yours, right? So someone can't forcefully feed you anything against your will, harm you against your will, and that sort of thing. And obviously you accept that perspective, but you're in a unique situation where, although you agree with me that you can't coerce somebody, harm somebody, at the same time though, you also want to forcefully prevent a woman pregnant within that 9-month period. She basically has to agree with your perspective, and so she can't enter in a contract with a doctor, and and in I think an ideal situation, you should be able to pay that doctor, and as opposed to taking tax dollars from someone like yourself who would oppose it, and have an abortion performed. You would also stop a back alley abortion. You would forcefully prevent a woman from basically controlling her own body. Now, it would be one thing if you actually advocated a form of persuasion, so that you would say, in fact, I, Stefanie, oppose abortion for myself, but I believe that legally other people should have the right to do whatever they want to do. So in a situation like myself, where I'd say, well, I morally think taking heroin or cocaine is a bad thing, but I personally oppose the war on drugs, and I believe that a person should be able to do whatever they want with their body, even though I think it's irrational and stupid. The main reason is that human beings need to exercise judgment over their own lives. This is the life of the life of reason, the life of our ability to be able to exercise our choices in our actions, and be able to take a thought, act upon it, and if we fail, if we make a mistake, we should be the architects of our own fate, and suffer the consequences, or maybe not flourish as a result of making a right choice. And so we shouldn't breach that sunder that connection between thought and action. A person should be able to stumble and fail, or not stumble, stand upright and succeed, and be able to take on the world. And that's the life of a free person. And so long as you don't harm others in the process. So you do not coerce others. You deal with others based on consent. Now, this is why my position I title is pro-life. You want to basically all tyrannies in history, all forms of what we call dictatorships, unfree societies. I just leave it that way. As unfree societies are based on this idea that you act for the benefit, that you have no right to exist for your own sake, that you exist for the sake of the tribe, the nation, or what have you, and the family. Now, let's look at your definition of reason, where you say that our ability to reason as a collective defines us as humans. Well, that's an interesting perspective, because if you couple that perspective with the idea that a person doesn't have control over their own body, then, as I was stating, that just before I mentioned this, that an individual now exists for the benefit of the collective. Again, if you look at Pol Pot, for example, and the Khmer Rouge, they were educated in Rousseauian philosophy. Rousseau believed in this idea of the general will. And the general will is that is interpreted by the grand legislator. Now, all us human beings are outside the elites are basically trying to live our lives based on our superficial selves. We're attached to our superficial selves. Well, the grand legislator knows our true and authentic, deeper selves, knows about what we really want, and he or she or this group of elites will tap into that deeper self and make us act in ways that we are too stupid to understand as to the benefit of ourselves. So we just have to go along, and that's it, no matter what. So that view, I think, is anti-life. You looked at if you look at human history, the societies that have flourished the most have basically recognized that humans need to be able to have control, greater control over their own lives. And if we just take abortion as one issue, one concrete issue, and we apply that principle of basically treating a human being as we're going to violate that human being regardless of what we think. So your position, Stefanie, is like a position of a robber who shows up at the door of a person and says, "Look, I really love your car. I want it." And the person says, "Look, I'm really thank you very much. I'm flattered that you love my car, but look, I can't give you my car." And the person says, "Well, like, I'm not asking. I did want to ask you because I think that's just a nice thing to do, but I've got this gun here, and it's a 367. That dirty hairy gun, 357 Magnum, and I want it, and you're going to give it to me." And so at the end of the day, the debate, just like you debating with anybody about abortion, is irrelevant, because at the end of the day, you're going to force them to agree with you. So debating becomes irrelevant. And then that's not treating a human being as a rational human being anymore. You're treating them basically as they must agree with you. Forget about whether or not they have a right to exist for their own sake. They're going to basically have to live the way you want them to live. That's anti-life. That's not recognizing human beings as rational entities, and that's just wrong. And now I want to use a case in the United States about euthanasia. It was a form of passive euthanasia, the Terri Schiavo case. And now Terri Schiavo was a young woman and 26 years old. She suffered a cardiac arrest due to lack of oxygen to the brain. She suffered severe brain damage that was irreversible. Now her husband for about 4 years was working with the family to find an answer. Went to several doctors, and they basically said there was no hope for her. She was doomed. That was it. So from 1990 to 2005, they finally there was a situation where they removed the feeding tube and she ended up dying. This is a tragic case, but I ask you this question: do you think Terri Schiavo, unfortunately she didn't have a living will, and I think a living will would have solved this problem, but and I'm an advocate of that. But do you think Terri Schiavo was alive in the sense that in any meaningful sense of the word? She was in a consistent vegetative state. Her brain stem basically controlled sort of motor functions and stuff like that, or just basic innate bodily functions, but not knowing any cognitive basis. So her family was sort of, because they didn't want to go through the grief of losing her, the reality is they were just living irrationally. A lot of religious people back this argument, basically it's life that she was alive, but I think that's a cruel thing to do to a person, in the sense of my form of body, my body, I'm no longer there, just let me go at that point. And I think that, I wonder, I'm going to ask you, what would you have done? What would you have wanted done for you? And so that, I think, will clearly illustrate the differences between our two perspectives. I mean, assuming that, basically going on your position about the, making decisions over others. We do this all the time, of course, and I'll bring up a power of attorney, which again is another form that we end up using when a person is no longer capable of making decisions for themselves. You seem to oppose a power of attorney. Maybe you can explain why you would oppose a power of attorney. Because that'd be consistent in your part, and being consistent if you had to agree with me. So there you go. That's my reply. I look forward to yours. I hope you're looking forward to the New Year's. I sure as hell am. Anyways, cheers to you, and I'm really enjoying this correspondence with you. Thank you very, very much. I'm really enjoying it. Cheers. Bye.